Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, it's so good to have you here on Life Support. What we do in this program is we tell stories, and stories about how Jesus enters in to various circumstances, trauma, suffering, projects to help other people, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm so glad you've joined us. We have a very special guest with us today. His name is Art Erickson. He's the executive director of StudiOne-Eighty, and I'm really glad you're here, Art. Thanks a lot for dropping by.
It's good to be here, Paul.
So tell me about StudiOne-Eighty. What exactly is that?
StudiOne-Eighty. We have been changing places and changing people 180 degrees in the same neighborhood for 52 years.
Wow.
And we invite you in, and we will share our hindsights and our insights for your foresights. So we want to train people to do transformational change in neighborhoods. And we want to do that with young people, 22 to 35 years old. We want to do a number of other things. So we're trainers.
Good for you. It seems like a really great endeavor. We'll talk about that here down the road. What brought you up here, and what got you involved with projects like that down in the Minneapolis area?
I grew up in Chicago. My dad was a PhD in organic chemistry. My mom never finished high school. She had pneumatic fever, and she had a heart problem. And they married, and I was one of the kids. And we were raised at 842 North Wells in Chicago, down by Cabrini Green. So I knew the projects. Mm-hmm. And when I say the projects, I mean the projects. Mm-hmm. And I also was very aware of redlining. Redlining is folks from the South would move up, African-American folks, colored folks in those days, would move up, and they would be in one neighborhood. So there'd be one family in an apartment, then there'd be two families in that apartment, and there'd be three families in that apartment because they couldn't go anywhere else. They had to be in their red-lined area. Mm-hmm. And so I was very aware of redlining. I also knew the area of Chicago because we knew Lake Michigan, mm-hmm. and Lake Michigan had all the white beaches except the 79th Street Bridge, beach, and that was the Black Beach, 6 blocks. That they could be there. Wow. I grew up in Moody Church, mm-hmm. A church that was built in 1900 for 4,600 people. And they had a youth director there, Bob Murphin, who was hired as a youth director, and he had some camps, off-the-street club camps, and I went to one of them. And when I was 10 years old, I almost drowned. This guy tried to drown me, and I was in the infirmary for 4 days. The next year, I gave my life to Christ. And so I never grew. But I was a believer, and my dad was a believer, my mom. In fact, my mom's best friend was Billy Graham.
Is that right?
Well, not Billy Graham, George Beverly Shea.
Oh, well, sure.
From Ottawa.
Yeah.
And so my dad was a radio announcer for 1 year, Sunday nights, for Billy's first radio program.
Is that right?
Yes.
Wow.
So Dad would announce everything, Bev would sing, and Billy would get up and preach.
Wow.
And I'd be running the halls at 6 years old.
That's like royalty.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I have a background of evangelism at a very interesting level, and Moody Church, where all the famous people would come through. Mm-hmm. And be interviewed. They'd preach there, and Tom Mix and all the different people. And so it was quite Youth for Christ started there. Mm-hmm. And so it was quite a thing. And I came up here to go to school. I came up here to go to Bethel College. And I got involved in Young Life. And then I took my Young Life background and started in Mound, Minnesota. By the way, where did Campus Crusade start? Everybody says California. Bill Bright was out in Mound, Minnesota. That's where he started Campus Crusade.
Is that right?
And they had a football camp, and they kicked the ball 90 yards and wowed the kids, and 27 kids came to Christ. And they asked me to come follow them up, and They all had collective amnesia. we don't remember that.
Yeah.
So I had to build my relationships, and we started a club there, and then Minnetonka and Edina and Roosevelt and Richfield and different places. And when I was 30, by the way, when I was 21 at Bethel, I had played football, basketball, baseball, college. I had done a lot of things, but I wasn't studying. And what are you in college for?
I had that problem too.
So I was playing cards until 2 o'clock in the morning with the guys. And one night at 10 o'clock, I got down on my knees and I gave my life to Christ again. But see, I had 11-year-old faith for a 21-year-old set of problems. It didn't fit. Now, this isn't technical. You know, I believe, you know, I don't have to do this all the time, but the truth is I have to do it every day.
Yeah.
Because I have to renegotiate my relationship with him. But I felt like 2,000 pounds came off my back. Then I had to lock myself in the classroom up there in the big hall from 6 until 10 and study and study and study, and began to put my disciplines together. Then I got involved with a guy with Young Life, and pretty soon I decided to go to Young Life. So I took that job. At 30, Young Life wanted me to go to Chicago, and I said, Chicago, I like here. And so I went to 4 different PhDs.
Wow.
And I asked them their counsel. One said, if you don't go to Chicago, Young Life will never give you anything else. And the other said, stay right where you are because it's just beginning to develop. And another said, go to the U and get a degree in social work because that's going to be the future of youth work. The last one said, you better get that on your knees. You don't get that from anybody. So I went to the Basilica, downtown Minneapolis, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 hours. Monday I was supposed to go to Chicago. Tuesday I was supposed to stay here. So I was at breakfast out in Excelsior at a restaurant, and on Saturday, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had a quiet piece that I was to go to Park Avenue Methodist Church. And so I applied for the job and got it. And I came into the church there, and it was a historic white church. And the neighborhood had gone really African-American because the freeway was put in, 35W, and it displaced poor people, just like over in St. Paul with Rondo. And all across the country, they displaced poor people. And then the people with skills and resources left. The primary economy, Lake Street, Auto Row, 11 new car dealers, the Sears Roebuck, the Mall of America, from everywhere coming in to shop there. They split. Sears went to the mall, and everybody else came out to the suburbs and got 12 acres and parking lots and everything else. And then the secondary economy came in, which is five things to get my money. I sell drugs, the drugs of the era. I sell myself. I sell somebody else. I street crime and fence at the convenience stores. Or I get a check from the government, so the bank, you know, first 3 days of the month are lines and lines of people cashing their checks. And none of it has dignity. So that created what we called the donut paradigm. The donut paradigm. So the city is a donut. The dough is on the outside, and the hole is in the middle. And it's not a hole, it's a sinkhole. And so we just said, we're at the church. I had a 50% job description in the church and 50% in the neighborhood. So I took my Young Life background, went to the schools, Central High School, Bryant Junior High, Wilder Elementary, had lunch with the kids like I always did, got to know them, and began to build relationships and began to do some programming, athletic club, summer programs, stress camping.
And how were you received?
By whom?
By the people you were ministering to, by the kids.
By the kids in the schools? Wonderfully. By the kids in the church? Carefully. By the parents?
Yeah.
You're bringing folks in here,
Yeah.
and you're taking them on trips, and they're getting to know each other, and they're beginning to mix, and this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you one story. I would go to school in the neighborhood all the time, and so I'd go out to the suburbs to see a kid for lunch at his school or her school. And one time I walked in, and the kid out in Richfield said, "What are you doing out here?" I said, "I'm coming to have lunch with you." He said, "You're supposed to be at church. You're supposed to be in your office at the church. You're not supposed to be out here with me." Mm-hmm. I said, "Hey, I just coming out to see who your support group is, who your friends are. I just came out here to see you." You see, there's geography is a very interesting thing.
Sure is.
So I was at the church for about 5 years, and I went to a board meeting one night, and my education commission chairperson stood up and said, "We are not going to renew Art Erickson's job this next year." So, okay. And then the senior pastor got up and said, "You're not going to decide on Art's job tonight. You're going to decide on the tandem ministry of Art Erickson and Phil Heinerman." So he tied his job with mine.
Good for him.
Pastors don't do that. They put their arm around you and say, "What are you going to do when you grow up?"
Yeah.
And we won 17-4, but we lost 600 members in the next 4 months.
Wow. Good old church politics.
Realities.
Yeah.
Of racial things going on in the church. Make sense?
Yeah. So you then obviously had already developed a commitment to that area or to this kind of work. Now, was this something that was cemented in your heart, or was this something that God had to kind of take you kicking and screaming into that?
Well, first of all, I grew up in Chicago at Moody, and that was in the neighborhood.
Yep.
Bob Murphy pulled off the street club kids.
Right.
And then I came up to Young Life, and we do the city. We do Richfield, we do Edina, we do Chaska, so we take the city.
Yeah.
So when I went into Park, I took a different geography. I took the central neighborhood, which was a square mile. Okay, Lake Street down to 38th, and then Chicago Avenue over to the freeway.
So for those that aren't from the Twin Cities, this is very close to the George Floyd.
It was right on the corner.
Yep.
Right. 38th in Chicago.
So you know that gives them some reference because they've probably seen that 100 times on video. That whole thing.
If not thousands.
Not thousands, yeah.
But the next thing I had to do is I took the job, and within 6 months I moved into the neighborhood and bought a house across the street from the church because I had to be incarnational. Mm-hmm. I had to live there, not in the car going in and out.
Yeah.
But incarnational.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood. And I just think that's very crucial.
I think it is too. If you're driving in from the suburbs, it's just difficult to. Number one, you're going to have a hard time earning trust. You're not going to understand the intricacies of what you're doing there, and I think that was a wise decision. Now you have quite a resume, I guess, of people that you've run up against doing all this. One of them being John Turneseed, who, of course, was Life Support's first story that they began to tell. Mm-hmm. How did you run into John and get to know him?
Well, John was 4 blocks away from me, where I lived, and I would see him at school, and I would see him in the neighborhood, and he wanted nothing to do with me. I was one of those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I kept saying hi to him and all that. And because I had a house in the neighborhood, I didn't have air conditioning. And so the gangs were getting big and a lot of shooting every night. So I was hearing the shots every night. Mm. In fact, John's son had his leg shot off with 16 shots behind my house.
Wow. So
this is going on all the time. And when I say incarnational, you wouldn't know this was going on if you didn't live there.
That's right.
If you were driving in every day, what's going on?
You have no context for that.
None. So it was that, and I got to know his family because it was a big family, and they all started playing basketball for us. We had a basketball court on the blacktop. We built basketball courts out there, 4 courts, and they were playing ball, and they would come to camp with me, but not John. So we just had that disparity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he was a gang kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked with kids,
Yeah.
and so that was one of the things that happened with John, and so he really didn't have anything to do with me when I was at Park, and I just followed him, but no relationship. Now in '93, I was 25 years at Park Avenue, and at '93, I went over and started Urban Ventures, which is 6 blocks away. And the mayor, Sharon Sells Belton, told us to buy Happy's Potato Chip Factory, which we did. Mm-hmm. And we moved in. That was Crack Alley. That was Alexander Brothers' pornography empire. And that was John Turnipseed's gang's headquarters.
Wow.
At the VFW hall, right across the street
wow.
there.
How about that?
So here we are.
Yeah.
3 murders, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we're back at it again.
Wow. And so there you were. Now, if you had to kind of summarize briefly what was the major problem you were seeing? In other words, not the symptom of the problem. I mean, you just listed a whole bunch of symptoms. But John would sit here and say it's lack of fathers. That's, if you want to really narrow it down to one big thing, what would you say to that?
I call it father absence.
Father absence, yeah.
Because there was a study done by the McKnight Foundation, 2 African-American PhDs, and they hired them to do a study on the central neighborhood. They found out there were 14% empty homes, vacant houses, and there was about 70% father absence.
Wow.
So this is huge.
Yeah.
Now, God, in his wisdom, created a family as the social structure that raises a family. Mm-hmm. It has a structuring father and a nurturing mother that love each other and raise their kids to be 18, out the house.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But give them all the structuring.
Yep.
Now, like I did, I sat down to a table every day as a kid in Chicago with my dad and mom. Mom sat here, dad sat here, my sister sat over there, my brother and I sat here, and we couldn't start breakfast until everyone sat. And then Dad prayed, and at the end of the meal, he read a scripture, and we couldn't leave until we were dismissed. Mm-hmm. Every meal. Mm-hmm. Family.
Yep.
Talk.
Yep.
Communicate. Mm-hmm. In a father-absent home, there's no table. Mm. There's absolutely no table. It's in front of the TV. It's in your bedroom. It's alone in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the communication isn't dialogue. It's shaming. It's blaming. It's who do you think you are? What's going on here? Why can't you? And so it's just all that stuff. So there's no building up of any kind of self-image, mm-hmm. any kind of relationship. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And mm-hmm. so what you have is you have men in the house, but not fathers. Mm-hmm. And the men don't care about you. And the men can be verbally abusive, they can be physically abusive, and they can be sexually abusive. And so what you have is a lot of problems going on with your kids.
Yeah.
And these kids have a lot of hurt, huge hurt, and they carry that hurt with them. By the way, there's a lot of anger. And the anger then goes to resentment. And that resentment goes to bitterness. And so you have in these situations a lot of bitterness. Mm. And the kids really don't get brain development. Sit down and read to them so they develop their brain, early childhood.
Yep.
They don't get skills. They don't have a workbench. They don't learn how to do things. So they don't have education. They don't have skills. And what can they do? So they go out and do what they can do, which is gang turf. And the family is not my family, it's the gang.
Yeah.
And I have a structure in the gang.
So they're getting a fake family.
You have to pay a price to get in.
Yep.
And you pay a huge price to get out. And mm-hmm. besides that, don't ask any questions, just do it.
Mm-hmm. So what are you working on in StudiOne-Eighty right now down there?
Well, could I talk about Park Avenue for a minute?
Yes.
Would that be okay? Because
go ahead.
I want to just say, when you take kids and you're going to put these kids together with these kids, you don't just take them to a nice little camp.
Right.
We took stress camping. So I took 40 kids on a 750-mile bike trip in 8 days. These are not bikers.
Yeah.
This is 85 miles a day.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, what's the worst day? Everybody says, oh, the first day. No. The third day.
Mm.
The third day, everything hurt so bad, so much. I hit a wall. I had a kid throw the bike down the ravine. And so you sit down and say, okay, sit down. What are you going to do now? Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? You're going to go down and get the bike. Shut up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go call my mother. Oh, really? First of all, she doesn't have a car, so she can't do anything. Shut up. So you have to wait an hour until the kid goes down and picks his bike up, repairs it, because we have a repair kit with the van, gets on and goes another 5 days. And the next 5 days are monotonous, until you're about 5 miles away from home and everybody gets ready to see the crowd and they come on the platform. Ah!
Yeah, right.
So 2 weeks later, you sit down and you talk about in life when you're 15, and instead of getting pregnant and going on welfare, don't, and go to college or go to school or do this. When you hit the wall, reach inside yourself and pull something out you didn't know you had, and it begin to keep going. Mm. And then learn that those that master the monotony of life, 3 meals a day, 11 diapers, pay the bills, blah, 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 year after year after year. The ones that master the monotony are the ones that win. Mm-hmm. So these are lessons. So we take mountain climbing trips to 13,000 feet. We go down to Key West over Christmas and do snorkeling and all that stuff. We had a bunch of stress camping trips that we put kids through constantly to help them build up, live in a bigger world. You know, they'd never been out of the neighborhood. Yeah. And then begin to put some skills together and some relationships together. And so we did that, and that produced kids that came through our programs that, 1, gave their life to Christ, 2, were discipled and disciplined, and 3, learned leadership skills. Mm-hmm. And they had a fabric now. They had a family, not a gang, not a father absent home. They had a family of their friends that really carried them through. And we have about 150 kids today that are someplace in this world as leaders of organizations and whatnot that came out of that. So that's important. Yeah. Now, when we went over to Urban Ventures, we had to do some other things, which we did. And now in StudiOne-Eighty, we do training.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions for you, so we're going to have you back. And you've raised a lot of really interesting topics, but thanks for all you're doing to help, because there aren't, everybody talks a good game. There's very few people that are willing to really get involved, and you're doing a good job. So thank you so much.